Okay, excellent. So, through the power of social media, we are live again. Patrick Quayle, your host for the Wicked Awesome Report, joined by my co-host, Declan O'Toole from Select Real Estate. Good morning, Declan.
Good morning, Patrick. How are you this morning?
Doing well. Things are crazy busy. We're in and beyond, and the spring market has definitely sprung for real estate, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about bidding wars, highest and best offers. We're still stuck in a situation where we're seeing a lot of limited inventory in a lot of towns and areas, and what can the buyers do, and what should the sellers do when they find themselves in that situation. So again, the premise here, this is the Wicked Awesome Report, covering a whole bunch of topics, I guess primarily real estate centric, because that's what we do, but we broadcast this every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. So thanks for tuning in. Please give us a like, drop a comment, follow the Wicked Awesome Report page, so you'll be able to see future videos when they come out. But again, it's every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. So let's jump into today's content, Declan. So I guess you're going to be the subject of today's call. We're interviewing you to get some of your expertise here. So limited inventory is what we're seeing out there in the marketplace, and homes tend to, when they do get listed, tend to move quickly if they're priced appropriately. And I know I certainly have a number of clients that are trying to purchase homes, and unfortunately they're getting disappointed because it's getting into that bidding war situation with multiple offers. So let's first talk about the buyer side of the equation, Declan. Okay, so you represent both buyers and sellers, so we'll touch both sides. But let's talk about the buyer side for a second. So you're representing a client that's looking to purchase a home, and they've gone out to see the home, whether it be a scheduled showing, but they're definitely interested in the home. They're making an offer, or they've made an offer, and you hear back from the listing agent, and the listing agent says something to the effect of, hey, we're in a multiple offer situation, give us your highest and best offer by 3 p.m. Monday, or whatever that timeline is. You're representing the buyers. What do you do?
All right, so there's a number of options, which is it's interesting. Today I'm on the other side of the equation. I've got a property where I expect multiple offers. So as you said, I do both sides of it. But if you get that call, you're certainly looking to put in offers, and you want to stand out from the crowd. There is something in your toolkit that would make you stand out. Actually, there's a number of things you can do. I suppose some of the items would be, you could, there's certainly things I think we're all familiar with, which could be put down a larger deposit, right? That makes you stand out a little bit. Obviously, get a strong pre-approval. One thing I have seen from a pre-approval perspective is it does stand out if you're very well qualified and you could buy a much more expensive house. It does stand out because I see it. If you get a pre-approval that shows you could pay a lot more, it's just in the mindset of the seller and the seller's agent. They feel like, you're a strong buyer. Downside of that is you're showing that you could probably go up a little bit more, and you've got a little bit more of an appetite to purchase. Something else that people tend to do is, there's no inspection clauses are going in a lot on properties right now. And
you mean waiving the home inspection?
Waiving the home inspection. It's something that, and I won't get into it too much in this conversation, but there's pros and cons, right? I'm typically against that, just because you're buying a property. This is your home. You don't know what's going on with it. Now, on a newer build, maybe it's a situation where you say, okay, what is the downside? If it's brand new, there's a home warranty very often for a year's time from the current builder. Sure. You maybe do an inspection afterwards. What I have done on occasion as a buyer's agent is I've come in and said, okay, you know what? We'll have an inspection for the buyer's information only. We're not, the concern that sellers have is that buyers are going to come in, they put a home inspection clause, and you're like, all right, there's another $5,000, right? They're going to go in and they're going to find. And I've had situations, and I tend to hold out. If you've got a buyer's agent coming in, you know they're coming in to get money off. We'll take care of the items they need, but you're not going to give it back. But long story short is, you could do. So if you offer to do a home inspection quickly, so if you want to do a home inspection, say you do it within 24 hours, they've got backup offers. They can always come back to the backup offers, and they don't lose a weekend on the market.
Sure. Well, I think that the home inspection for informational purposes only, I think is a good, I guess, middle ground. It shows the seller, well, you're not going in with a high offer and using a home inspection to knock that price down later. But it's also protecting those buyers in the sense that they know what's really going on with the home if there are any major issues.
Right.
So I guess that might be a sort of a happy middle ground on both sides. And
again, it's maybe it's one of those tricky things, but let's say you do find something, you can still have a conversation, right? Yeah. So it's just you're going in there with you're making it clear that your intent is not to basically move the goalposts.
Yeah.
If something comes up, that by the letter of the law of the letter, you're talking within, you'll walk away. But you know what? They may come back to you and say, look, you know what? I see that there's an issue with, maybe it's a sewer pipe that's that's breaking, or whatever it happens to be. That they'll come back and say, okay, you know what? We'll work something out with you.
Yeah, I mean, and from the seller side, if it's something major that shows up like that, they're gonna have to deal with it anyway. If that,
Yes.
if your buyer walks away, that issue still exists. That seller is going to need to deal with it on the next buyer that comes in and makes an offer.
And that's just again where for that seller, that's why no home inspection, I suppose, is always sometimes that's worth more than the money.
Yeah, so off topic here a little bit, and maybe I don't know, maybe it's more on the seller side, the seller representation. Do you typically advise a seller get their own home inspection before they list the home?
I've done that. It depends on the property. I say it depends, right? It also depends on the market, right? If somebody's tight, and there are some sellers that are tight for numbers, they don't want to spend the $600, $700. I've actually spoken to home inspectors about this, saying they should be marketing themselves for doing home inspections before offers come in. In fact, I've a property I'm selling right now. Somebody come in, they had 15 minutes to do it because that's how it was set up for the showings. Yep. Brought a home inspector through. I think so. That's the other side. That's on the buyer side before they even making the offer. That's another opportunity for the buyer. But it certainly, if you get a home inspection beforehand, all the cards are on the table, right? If it's a bona fide proper home inspection, or at least you've got something you can show, and you can actually upfront just throw it up there. And you know what? They might know about the water table and that there's some seepage in the garage. Doesn't come up later, right? They can't come back to you and say we found this.
Yeah, exactly. So sort of full disclosure, what the issues are, and I guess the seller has a chance to address any of those major issues, so it doesn't become a sticking point when it comes to negotiating the actual contract.
Right. But speaking to that, I suppose yes, in an ideal world, yes, do a home inspection first. In some cases, again, because of the market that we're in, you could not do the home inspection because there's a good chance they're going to have offers that don't have a home inspection clause in it. So just, there's you can flip it either side.
Yeah, you're right. I guess it all depends on what's happening locally in your market and how much of a hot market it is, and if the home's priced appropriately and average days on market and so forth. You have to as a seller, you need to lean into the expertise of your real estate agent to help you make those decisions. So what I hear you saying on the offers that come in representing the buyers, there are a handful of terms, when it comes to highest and best. Okay, so highest obviously means the highest, purchase price. Best can mean, a couple of different things, both to the buyer and the seller. It could be like we were just talking about, waiving a home inspection. It could be the timelines.
Right.
So, if a seller, for whatever reason, really needs to close quickly because maybe they've got their next purchase lined up and there's a time deadline with that. And as a buyer, you can get to the closing table quickly. Well, that's great. But on the other end, I've seen clients that have gone in with really flexible dates and saying, hey, we can close real quickly if you need to, but at the same point, we're not in a rush. If that seller hasn't found the next home yet and they need 60, 90, 120 days, if the buyers really want that home and they can be flexible with the dates, do you think a seller would consider time being more valuable than money in some circumstances?
Absolutely. There's already, actually the other thing too is a lot of sellers are buyers. So you may have a situation if you're a buyer and you've got the flexibility, maybe you're in a tenancy, a will lease. I mean, depending on what your situation is, maybe you're living at home, maybe you got a good landlord, or that you can replace yourself in a lease pretty quickly. Those buyers may not have found their new place. They want to see if they can sell the property first. Mm-hmm. And that's a perfect example where they don't want to be making two moves, or moving stuff into storage, moving in with the parents, and then moving onto it. So that in a number of cases is more important than price.
Yeah, it's one of the most stressful things out there. The statistics show, moving your house, one of the most stressful things most people don't want to do. And if you have to do it twice over the course of one transaction, it makes it even less desirable.
But something else that there's another, you were asking me, with buyers, how do you stand out with multiple offers, or how do you? So those are some of that people know. Something that people might not be as familiar with. And in fact, if you want to pick a fight or start an argument between real estate agents, just bring up.
Let's go. Come on, bring it up. Let's go.
all you got to do is say escalation clause. Right?
Escalation. Excellent. Yeah. So I actually had a client that was putting in an offer this weekend that had an escalation clause. So for reviewers that are not familiar with making offers and what an escalation clause is, explain what that is and explain why real estate agents don't like it.
Some do, right? It depends. That's why it's an argument.
Yeah, I guess what side of the equation you're on. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. So you were alluding to that it's still a tight market. There's multiple offers. The last couple of weeks, it's interesting. Things have really started. We did say, I think in a previous podcast, that that it was going to be a late spring market, and here we are.
Yep.
So the late spring market is an early summer market. So you wouldn't have heard an escalation. A lot of people still haven't. If you're in a balanced market, that escalation clauses don't really come into play much. If there's multiple offer situations, a strategy that makes them stand out. And essentially what it is a buyer will make an offer on a property, and you will say, okay, I will purchase this property for a certain dollar amount over the next best offer. So let's, it'd be $1,000.
Let's throw some, give some numbers as an example, just so we can put it into a context.
All right. So let's say, for argument's sake, you're a buyer and you decide, you see this property. It's on for $580,000 for argument's sake, right? Okay. And you decide that, I'd like to pay $6,000, but my worst case scenario, best case scenario, is I can go to $615,000, right? You get other offers will come in, and so you'll go back, you'll make an offer, right? Your offer is going to say, my offer is $600,000,
okay.
But I'd be willing to pay $1,000 over the best other offer, the highest offer other than myself. There's an offer higher than $600,000. Mm-hmm. I'll pay $1,000, just to use $1,000 as an analogy, $1,000 more than that, up to $615,000. And so essentially what an escalation clause has, you have to have an escalation amount, which is $615,000, a cap price, though I have heard of them happening without a cap, and that doesn't do a service to a buyer. And then you also have to kind of prove that there's a bona fide offer. They have to show that there's an offer that is, so let's say, for argument's sake, in this scenario, right? You're looking at, you may have an offer of $590. Remember, it was on for $580, $595, yours for $6, one for $605, and one for $610. Just for argument's sake, just on the numbers, forgetting about all the other items. In that situation, if it played out, you're looking at, you would end up getting the property. If that a bona fide offer for $610, you'd get it for $611, right? So you didn't pay $615, you didn't pay $600, you paid $611,000.
Okay.
Um,
So my initial offer is 600.
yep,
I put a cap. I'm willing to go as high as 615,
correct.
but the escalation clause says I'll pay $1,000 more than whatever the highest bona fide offer you get, up to a maximum of 615.
Correct. If there's a 620 offer, you get beaten out. But in theory, you're really offering your highest and best there with the 615. But you're saying that's if we get up, if other buyers have got the same appetite as yourself.
So all right. So I think the concept, as laid out, explained there, I think certainly makes sense. Why do some real estate agents have difficulty with that?
A couple of things. One is from a seller's perspective, it doesn't give you a lot of opportunity. So actually, let's use the same example, right? You've got a seller. If let's say you didn't have that clause in there, you as a buyer. So first of all, it's when you're doing that, putting that offer in, you're cutting out the middle parties, right? You're not negotiating the price up and down. So as part of the nuances of negotiations, in theory, if you've got a good agent, you should be able to get your highest and best offer. Certainly, I feel like as I'm the seller's agent, I can get the highest and best for my seller. If you're a buyer's agent, you feel like you can get the lowest and best for your buyer, right?
Yep.
So, but let's just even say in this scenario, you're the seller, all right? Just to take it from that perspective, you had your 590, you had your 595, 605, 600, which is your 605, 610, right? You ended up selling the property for $611,000. You had somebody that made an offer to you, 615. Now it wasn't 600, it was 600 offer, but they basically said their highest and best would have been 615.
Mm-hmm.
Now, typically in a multiple offer situation, what will happen is you have the offers in, and what would happen is you'll go back to those people. So what would happen if the buyer that was at 595, right? That's their first offer. When they make a first offer, it's very seldom that's their highest and best offer. Maybe they decide, you know what, you live in the payment, you don't live in the price, right? So they know that the difference that it would make to them to go to 620 or 625, say they come back, because you're in a situation where you got other offers, there's some psychology to it. They pay 620, just for argument's sake, they're willing to pay 620. You've just lost out on $9,000 because you didn't have an opportunity to go back to all the other buyers and give a highest and best.
Yeah, so it wipes like you said, the nuances of negotiating right off the table.
So it's not just the ego of the agents that think they're great negotiators, and we all think we are. Yeah. But it really can be harmful to the seller.
Yeah, so the seller really, is getting, a good offer, but not the maximum dollar that they may have otherwise received.
Right.
Okay.
There's another element to this too, Patrick, is I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on Zoom. But there's a few issues, and again, an attorney can speak better to this, but you got some other issues too. So let's say we use the same scenario, right? You had a 610 offer, right? You're going to want to ascertain that the next highest offer, or that offer is illegitimate, and was it a bona fide third party? So,
so it wasn't someone that just tried to help the seller out and threw an offer in to try and help push that, that price higher.
There was years ago, it was a friend of mine that was selling the BMW on eBay, and they have a set, cutoff price.
Yep.
They'd asked me to bid on it up to whatever it was. I think it was $1,000 less than the cutoff price, the reserve price, right?
Yeah, the reserve. Yep.
The reserve. So it's kind of similar to that, and that completely illegal, but do you buck the system where I go, hey, Patrick, I'm selling this house, and why don't you put in a 614 offer? I know somebody that'll buy it for 615. Are you a bona fide third party? Were you independent? And then they're going to go back and prove that.
Yeah.
And there are some issues just from a legality perspective. There's a confidentiality first off too of the person that submitted that offer. They're probably not looking to have somebody pass along their information. Now you could redact the information. There's ways to do it, but then you've got another buyer that wants to see that it actually is a proper offer.
Yeah, no, I can certainly see it from the buyer's perspective. Okay, we said offers was 6. we said we'd pay $1,000 more than the highest offer. You say have an offer of 610.
Right.
Okay, I'm willing to pay 611, but prove to me you actually have an offer of 610.
Right.
You know, and it's a real offer,
Right.
not just a buddy, you know, putting it on the back of a napkin and sliding it across the table. All
Well,
right.
the other element of it, I haven't had to deal with it, thankfully, is what if you have multiple escalation clause office properties?
Oh my God, I haven't even thought of that. How the hell does that work?
I think you kind of go again. I haven't had to deal with it, but you know, I think you're going back and you're essentially going for highest and best to those parties. I mean, my advice typically to a seller is when there's an escalation clause is, first off, which is interesting, you already see what this person would go up to most likely. So I'm just saying, if you're learning, there's always research on the other side, is to go back to everybody with a highest and best. You already know what their highest and best is. They may even go, actually, you don't know, they may actually go higher than that when they see that the escalation clause doesn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be tricky. It's tricky with one, but certainly more tricky with others.
multiple. That's too many, too much juggling going on for that. I haven't even thought of multiple escalation clauses. All right, so that's interesting perspective as to how to represent the buyer. Now, on the seller side, so you're representing the seller. So shift gears here a little bit. You're representing a seller. You're in a multiple bid situation, multiple offer situation. You know, the typical thing is to go back to everyone that has submitted that, you know, an offer and ask for highest and best by, you know, whatever, 3 p.m. on Monday, you know, whatever the timeline is. Those offers come in, you're representing the seller. You know, highest again, obviously is dollar amount,
Yep.
but sort of the nuances of the offer from the seller side, what are the couple of things that make up which is the best offer?
So, number one thing to ask, it's even more so than price, can they close? Right? So, if there's it's great if it's a cash offer, and actually not all cash offers are cash offers, by the way.
Yeah.
As you probably know, there's a loan usually coming from somewhere.
Yep.
But it's a lot of it's vetting. It's not just part of it is not just the price, but so in terms of their ability to close, you need to vet. I not just ask, but I almost insist to speak to their mortgage broker very often, the mortgage broker or banker, just to see where there are, kind of have that conversation and make sure it's not like the landlord that had a tenant said they were great for the next person. You know, you need
just sort of trust but verify.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And that's something that I do in my practice. You know, every time I have a client that's making an offer, I'll make a phone call behind that offer, reach out to the listing agent and say, hey, you know, Mr. and Miss real estate agent, my client, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you know, I have all their documents. This is not some bogus letter. We actually have all their tax returns and financials and all that stuff. And I certainly think that helps an offer stand out as being different, and hopefully by different it's perceived as being better. No, but you're right. You're representing the seller. What's the best offer? Well, the one you can actually get to the closing table with.
No, there may be others.
That would be the best offer.
Exactly. And now that being said, right, offers tend to have contingencies, right? There's a home inspection contingency usually after a purchase and sale, home inspection contingency, mortgage contingency, and then there's the timing of when it closes, right? So those are other items to take into consideration. If you've got an older house, or I hate to say this, but you've got an agent that has a reputation for being unscrupulous, and they have a home inspection clause in there.
Yep.
You mentally calculate $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever the number is. So that is, with no inspection, from a seller's perspective, no inspection means that you're more likely, it comes back to the same question, you're still more likely to close. Right. And something's not, and at the price that they're offering, because you got the home inspection, you got the appraisal. They're the two sort of big factors that have an impact on what the eventual selling price is going to be. You can't so much control the appraisal. You do, certainly I try to work with appraisers and get them the right comps. But from that perspective, you got the home inspection. I've actually had owners, and believe it or not, it does make a difference. And just, this is really more from a buyer's perspective, but I've been on the selling side where this has happened, where somebody writes a nice letter. Maybe they're a school teacher moving into that neighborhood, and they really love their home, and they've gotten the property for, you know, $2, $3, $4, $5,000 less than the next best offer. So it's whatever the best offer is to your seller.
Yeah, the motivation letter.
The motivation letter makes a huge difference.
Picture of the buyers and their family and the young kids, and
don't forget dogs. Or borrow somebody's
strings of the seller, you know.
Yeah. It does work. People like to work with people.
Well, absolutely. No, I've seen transactions. I've been involved in transactions where, you know, that exact thing has happened. It's, you know, an older couple that is, you know, downsizing. It's the home that they raised their family in. And now you got a young family that's making an offer, and part of the motivation letter, you know, is a picture of them with the 2.5 kids and the German Shepherd dog, and you know, it's the, you know, the nice happy family that wants to move in, and the sellers are willing to work with those people because of the people, not because of the dollar amounts on the contract.
Well, and you know, another one is, and you and I both have a similar clients. You'll know who it is, but you know, selling their home, and you know, it's a lovely neighborhood. In fact, I actually joked, and it was true, during these open houses, it looked like the Truman Show. You know, you had neighbors coming in, the kid coming down on the tricycle. I got to know all the neighbors. It's just, and that, you know, parting person, but it's really just, they were so friendly with every. So the I suppose the point was that it was like, I've said, look, you know, please, you know, I prefer not to sell it to a developer. Now, price point 700, I said, well, if it's 800, we sell it to a developer. But literally, because this person doesn't want the neighborhood she's leaving to get, you know, get to have a mega mansion in place of a much smaller property.
Yeah, it, you know, changes the character of the neighborhood, and that's you know, again, having good relationship with your neighbors, you know, certainly can't help.
No, that's true. Yeah, you're right. And there's but again, it's all about, that's motivation, right? So you got the price, you got the terms, and you have what motivates that seller. I don't know if we brought it up. I'm sure we did. You know, they're looking to buy another home. That's the other thing, is that's a big one. Is take some of the stress off them.
Yeah.
So you tick that box. But so yeah, you know, if you ask me my opinion, so if, you know, if I'm looking at it from a buyer's perspective, seller's perspective, so the one that, you know, we agents have our arguments about, which is the escalation clause. You know, what would I do if I'm the buyer's agent? What would I do as the seller's agent in each situation? I think if there's a multiple offer situation, your job is to get the best deal for your client. So you do what's best for it. It's, you know, people ask about what are the ethics. It's legal. I don't think it's necessarily unethical. I think there's pros and cons, as we just said, for the buyer and the seller, as well as the seller, if you're showing your cards. If there's a multiple offer situation, I think that's going to put them over the edge. I will do an escalation clause. I don't do them very often, but on occasion I will. As a seller's representative, as on the other end of that, I tend to go to my sellers and say, look, come back and let's ask for the highest and best offer. And there's a sense of fairness certainly to that, because that's, you know, the best. You know, there's kind of an analogy. I think I mentioned it to you earlier. It's kind of like, you know, you're just going fast enough, you know, to beat out the second runner. You know, that's the 6:15 offer versus where it might have been 6:20.
Sort of joking, I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you.
Exactly. And that's why I think it is, certainly, all things being equal, I think I certainly prefer a situation where, you know, it's just you put in your offers, and then you come back and say, okay, now it's time for best and final. Let's work this out and work through all the details. It's just it feels it's a lot more organic. It's more how things are done.
I think, and it makes it maybe a little bit more fair for everybody involved.
Right. But then the question is, if you're a buyer's agent, if you're a buyer, do you want to be fair? You're trying to buy a house. Yeah. There's again, this is where, as I said, it's people get uncomfortable with the conversation, but you know, you might feel it's unfair that everybody can bid higher than you too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a negotiation, and you've got, you know, two opposite ends of the table here, and whether you're the buyer's agent or the seller's agent, you're negotiating for your client to get the best deal, whatever the best is. You know, sometimes that's timeline, sometimes that's dollar amount, sometimes it's just feeling good about the transaction.
Right.
You know, and you like who the buyer is, because they're a young family, same as you were when you bought the home, whatever, right, 25 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, so best So I guess the big takeaway here is whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, best doesn't always necessarily mean highest in terms of dollar amount. There are other pieces to the equation to help your offer stand out as being better or more likely to be accepted. Let's talk about, because you mentioned a couple of things, or mentioned a couple of times, the other agent on the transaction may have a reputation for being unscrupulous. Okay. How in these transactions, how important is the relationship with the other parties involved? Now, again, you're representing one side of the equation, either the buyer or the seller. The other party is representing the other side, so there is a negotiation. You do have a fiduciary responsibility, and you can be, competent professionals in doing that negotiation. But even though you're representing different parties, how important is that relationship with the person on the other end of the transaction and their reputation? How does that factor into quote unquote best when it comes to an offer?
So it's very important. So a couple of things. One is at the offer stage, and obviously then you got to deal with this other person all the way through the transaction. It's like a sped up marriage, right? You're there for 60 days, but it's like you've been living with them for 20 years.
Yeah.
So when it comes to offers, first off, we and it's by law as well, present all offers. And I certainly don't make the call on whether you do business with another agent or not. But I would certainly let my seller know what the ground rules are, what to expect going forward. So that it ends up being the seller's call. It's their property, their purchase. As I said, they haven't always taken the highest price. They're net. But keep in mind, and you know this, as you've been involved in transactions. There are a number of people involved in the transaction. There's the other broker. There's attorneys on both sides. There's buyers. There's sellers. There's then you get into appraisers and other members of it. But basically, what you're looking at, you've got a relationship with these people. Stuff goes wrong during deals. I've done hundreds of them at this point. I've probably got about 5 that, in fact, one I remember where somebody forgot the keys, and I was like, great, something went wrong, because I was waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And exactly, and when you're going to a closing table with nothing having gone wrong, it's like, oh, this is not good. But yeah, but my point is, it becomes an arbitration. When you're in real estate, you become a psychologist, you become an arbitrator, you become a best friend. I mean, I kind of call it sometimes sleeping with the enemy. You're not your enemy, but you actually become very friendly. You should get to know the other person. Stuff goes wrong. You've got people miss deadlines or need to go to deadlines. People get blamed for things. So it becomes a case of if you've got somebody, you've got a good working relationship, you've got trust, you've got respect, and you know that things aren't going to happen down the road. So if you think that somebody's a shaky character, and there's not too many of them, by the way, they're very much the minority. I've had very few dealings with somebody that, but you're going to have situations where they may not have a washer dryer goes missing. That's the simplest type of thing that might happen. There are purchase and sale. People hold out and see if they can people try to retrade you. You'd be surprised how many things can go wrong during a transaction. And again, some people make genuine mistakes, but then they also can't admit to them. And that's the worst of it. The blame game stops. Nobody wants to be wrong. And
everybody just wants to point the finger.
Exactly.
It was him or it was her, they did it. Yeah.
I heard, again, it's just like a marriage, right? If you can start taking some responsibility for your own, do as I say and not as I do. But you gotta, if you find somebody that's competent.
Is that Mrs. O'Toole over your shoulder watching the show?
I made sure to lock the door before we started this conversation. But it's very important that you have a good working relationship with the person on the other side. It's better that and then when stuff happens, you work it out and you find ways to bring all the parties to the table.
So when it comes to highest and best, that's another piece of best. The reputation of the other people involved. Because what I said it earlier, really, what is the best offer? the one you can get to the closing table with.
And that's what it comes down to. I don't mind. At the end of the day, I'll work with anyone. But again, the person that you know, like, and trust are the ones you're most likely to be able to get, as you said, to the closing table. Who can close, and get the transaction done at the price you agreed on, so that you get there with the terms that you had at the offer. So that's really what it comes down to.
Exactly. All right, so we're coming up, I think, right about at a half hour. So I think maybe we should start wrapping it up. Another edition of the Wicked Awesome Report, broadcast this every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. or 10-ish, depending on the technical difficulties getting started. I'm Patrick Whaley, your friend in the mortgage business, here with my co-host Declan O'Toole from Select Real Estate, talking, real estate, business in general, here on the Wicked Awesome Report. If you'd like to hop on the show and be interviewed by us, have a conversation online here with the power of Zoom and social media, I'd love to have you join us. Just drop a comment, send either of us a private message. Again, we broadcast this every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Check out the Wicked Awesome Report Facebook page. Give us a like. Drop some comments there so you'll be notified when future broadcasts are posted. So some great information today. Bidding wars, escalation clauses, highest and best offers, really what best means. It's not always dollar amounts. I think we learned that on today's call. So Declan, thank you. Just a complete wealth of information with your number of years in the business, and hopefully our viewers can take some of that to heart. And
I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve if any of your viewers are interested in.
Okay, all right. So we'll take that offline. We don't want everybody to know all the tricks of the game. So, so whether you're a buyer making an offer or a seller trying to accept an offer, this is just some information on what best really can mean, and help you get to conclusion of the transaction, with minimal hassle, and make sure everybody's smiling and happy at the end of the day at the closing table. So thank you for joining us, Declan. Again, a wealth of information. And this has been another edition of the Wicked Awesome Report. So until the next show, thank you everybody for tuning in, and stay awesome. All right, let's wrap this up and stop this live.